It's Mark Welch. Thank you, Mark. So true, so true. That feeds nicely into my message today. How about that? Love it when that happens. We planned it, we did. Sometimes the best synchronicities are things you don't plan, though. Those are always wonderful. All right, well, I have a couple announcements before I begin my message today. One is that if you like to do demolition work, we want you. We want to do some demo work downstairs in the basement, which has been kind of our YOU room, and it's got some old paneling in there and some old funky ceiling tiles, and we're going to make it much more modern and bright, and so we got to tear out the paneling and tear out the ceiling, and it's just the kind of thing that some of us like to do. So if that turns you on, and I will not be sexist about it, any sex is fine as long as you show up. So next Saturday, what's that? Are there power tools involved? You know, I think it's just going to be kind of a rip and grunt operation, actually. I don't think there'll be any power tools. We will let the licensed contractor come back with the power tools and actually do the construction. If I would have stout men. What's the song I'm looking for? What is the song? No, that wasn't it. Stout-hearted men, that's what I was thinking of. Anyway, stout-hearted men or women, that's what we're looking for. Anyway, that's one announcement. That's next Saturday, 10 o'clock, downstairs. The other one is World Day of Prayer is coming up, September 11th. We're going to have an all-day prayer vigil here. So you can come in any time during the day between 9 and 6, and there'll be music and there'll be a space for prayer. On the hour, we'll have actual prayers spoken. And then at night, 7 o'clock that night, we're going to have an interfaith prayer service. So we're going to have leaders from throughout the community, from many faiths, that are going to be sharing something about prayer and their faith, and then actually sharing a prayer. So that's going to be 7 or 8 different faith leaders from the community. And we'll have some great music from Emiliano Campobello, who is a beautiful Native American flutist. And also Joanna is going to be here to sing some beautiful music. So that's September 11th. Good. Now, last week we started a series called Living Originally. The title was not original. It was based on a book by the name Living Originally. So the book is by Robert Brummett, who is a Unity minister and a great author. What he's done in here is basically created yet another version of the path. And living originally, in his understanding and what he means by that, is not so much about living uniquely in your life, but originally with the sense that we're all created by divine blueprint. And that's our original nature. That's who and what we really are, is we are spiritual beings. And to live originally means really to find our way back to that essential self, to who and what we really are. So the spiritual journey really, you know this by now, but it always bears repeating because somehow you have to kind of know what the end game is, you know? You kind of have to know, where are we going? Although it's true that in some contexts, in some quantum physics, you don't have to know where you're going to get there. But in the way we think in terms of linear, what we are going for is that essential nature. What we are going for is a realization, as we say in our mission statement every Sunday, to realize our divine nature. So to realize our divine nature is really to call ourselves back to this grander sense of self that is always there. It's never really gone anywhere, but it's been obscured by a false sense of self. You and I have become identified with something less than this true self, and our journey is to uncover, unmask, take away layers of the forgetfulness that has happened over this embodiment of life, and perhaps even prior lives, if we believe in that, that has encrusted the core essence of who we are and has us living from who we are not, as opposed to who we are. So to live originally is for us to really dismantle that conditioned programming that has been added unto our essence. Does that make sense? And so it's very much like the demolition project. Well, somewhat like the demolition. It's not quite that violent, I would hope. But there is this notion of, what's behind that paneling is a fresh surface that will be more in line with what will serve us in this community. And what is behind the facade of who you think you are is the more pure self that will serve you in living life more abundantly, more successfully, more lovingly, and more peacefully. Is anyone up for that at all? Just a little of that? I'll have some of that, please. Yes, extra helpings. So that's our end game, is to have that realization, and the realization of that really is the fruits of the Spirit. So when you talk from any faith tradition, you hear such things as the nature of God is love, it's peace, it's abundance, it's forgiveness, it's grace, it's wholeness, it's nothing missing. And our version of that particular truth is not that that's just true of some divine entity called God, but that we are the offspring of that divine, and so we share in all those qualities. So at the core of who you are love, and you are peace, and you are joy, and you are wholeness, and you are forgiveness, and you are the essence and the embodiment of wholeness itself. And that's who you are. And so our job is to find a pathway back, and this is a pathway. So last week we talked about radical self-awareness. And the reason we need awareness is to first become aware of what shows up for us when something other than who we are takes on its identity as us. So you may know intellectually that you're a child of God. You may know that you believe that you are a spiritual being first and foremost. How many believe that? At least conceptually. There you go. Okay, you know that. You have that, some sense of that. But then somebody, for example, criticizes you. Can you believe that they would do that? There are people that actually criticize you in your life, or say something unkind, or at least you interpret it as being unkind. Or you have a moment with a coworker in which you're extremely frustrated and you think that maybe they got it in for you. Or you have a moment with your significant other. That's a really good opportunity to practice living originally, because with a significant other, do we have high standards of how they should treat us? Well, yeah. I mean, who lives up to that? But that is the field, that is the grist for the mill of this practice. And so awareness it would be ideal if we could just be aware of our divine self. And if you can do that, then you can skip this whole course. We'll see you in 5 weeks when we get on to the next thing. But if sometimes you struggle with awareness of your divine self, then this practice is for you. Because what this does is we become aware of when we experience ourselves being something other than who we are. So, in the example, somebody criticizes you, what might you feel? What might you become aware of in your experience? Shame, anger, hurt, resentment. Yeah. Say again? Self-pity, martyr. Yeah. Become a real victim in that, right? And as we go farther along in this talk and we begin to talk more about how we have connections to some really, really deep illusions about ourselves, which are the ones that are sort of hidden and under the surface, we get to understand why we react the way we do to sometimes relatively slight infractions that people inflict upon us, but how we react. And I'll tell you about a story of how I did that this week. So awareness is the capacity that you and I have to be like a witness unto what is happening to us in a more objective way. Because if I'm not simply in a place of awareness when somebody criticizes me, what do? What's the word? It's an R word. I react. And if I react, it's because I'm absolutely identified with, I'm believing what they said in some way. At some level, I'm believing that their criticism was either true about me, or I believe that I have every right to feel the way I feel. Awareness is like a buffer. So awareness begins to say, let's first notice. Now, you may not do this right away, but you can loop back, right? So you may have a reaction of anger or hurt. But with the next moment of consciousness, you can become aware of what just happened in you in relationship to what was said. And you could say, oh, now I notice that I just got frustrated, or I notice that I just got angry. Now, there's nothing you need to do at that point with it. It's just the simple step of being aware. And I think last Sunday I used the example of like a reporter who would be kind of telling the story of what he just noticed without adding any commentary to it, right? Just the facts, just the facts. So the facts are someone said, bloop, bloop, and then you got this feeling, bloop, bloop. And so that's the facts. Now, there's maybe a whole nother story that you went off on, right, that led to your reaction, but we're not there yet. But this week we're going to start getting into that. So awareness is the first step. The next step is acceptance. This week is called deep acceptance. And acceptance, I'm going to read from the book, page 50, if you're interested. He's got all kinds of definitions, but this one is a nice little summary. Deep acceptance, self-acceptance, is simply allowing each experience to be what it is without interfering in any way. I am fully present to each experience without any resistance, analysis, interpretation, manipulation, or control. What fun is that? That sounds like robotic, doesn't it? All right, I'm just going to be fully present, and I will not resist, analyze, interpret, manipulate, or control, because I feel no feelings. I am pure logic. So that's what he's saying. But that's what he's saying, so I'm just reading. I experience just what is here, and I add nothing to it. See that? That's, add nothing to it, yeah. There it is. You know, Mr. Spock, he's just observing. I experience each sensation, emotion, and thought completely. Oh, no, wait. We do get to experience. I experience each sensation, emotion, and thought completely. Well, that's better, isn't it? I feel better because I want to be able to feel. Do you want to feel? Feeling is important. I experience each sensation, emotion, and thought completely, and then I let it go. Oh, so easily said. He says, to use a campfire metaphor, I don't attempt to extinguish the fire, but I don't throw any more wood on it either. Can you relate to throwing wood on the fire? So he says, I don't throw wood on it. I just let the fire burn until it burns itself out. Wow. So what do we do that throws wood on the fire? We think about it a lot. And what else do we do that really kind of goes from just sort of ouch to like, oh, what happens in us? You get your emotions involved. And what might be the dynamic that leads from, like if I hit my finger with a pin and, that's not a good example. Well, let's say you hit my finger with a, what can I do with that? I could just feel that pain, but then what else could I do with it besides that? Especially if you did it. I would think you're against me. I'm going to just tell you. Yeah, I could go into a whole story about, how could she, what, huh, me? Oh, and we go into this whole story about what that must mean, right? We don't know. We have no idea what it meant from the other person's perspective, but boy, we have a whole story about what it means to us. Is that connected to the truth of who we are? Is that taking us further or closer to who we are? It's further. So we don't want to do anything to take us further afield from the true nature of who we are. So when we notice that we might be adding fuel to this fire, the fire being the initial reaction and the emotions which are normal and human, but when we begin going, oh, and you know what that means, because it's the meaning making that makes a little pinprick into a gaping wound, and we're just oozing pain and suffering all over. Right? Because we have made it mean something else, and that's usually connected to what? Our past, right? Because your little sister used to pick on you all the time. I had a big sister who used to pick on me all the time. But, we all have these stories about how this looks like something else. And so acceptance is about, okay, I'm going to feel the feelings. I'm not going to be this robot and just go, I am in awareness of what is happening to me right now. No, we're going to go, I'm in awareness of what's happening right now, and I'm actually feeling pretty frustrated. And I'm feeling pretty sad. And I'm feeling pretty hurt. And then this is where you have to watch it, because then you might easily make that so tiny quantum leap into story about what this means. So that's what acceptance does. It just says, okay, could you just be with it? Just feel what's true about this situation right now. And you don't have to connect it. It's an option. It's a path that you can choose to take or not take. Now, you may think, because the way you're wired, and many of us have these neural pathways that are connected to our subconscious, that it happens automatically. It probably does in large part, but as soon as you are aware that you are doing it, you can do what? Stop. Pause, right? You can stop. You can decide that is not going to lead to more suffering, and you're in it for enlightenment. You're in this life for enlightenment, not to prove how right you are about what somebody did and what it meant and how this means that blah, 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 and we're going to get into that in a minute. You'll see a slide at just how ugly we can get with these stories. But we'll bring you out of here. You will not be depressed when you leave, I assure you. We're not going to go that far down the rabbit hole, are we, Mark? We didn't do that in the first service. No, but we'll try not to do that. So, okay, so great. So, of course, I need to give you a story from my little life and my so-called spiritual life, my so-called enlightenment. And the story is this. So, you all know I play a little bit of golf, and I emphasize the word little. I don't consider myself a golfer because if you're a golfer, then you identify yourself as a golfer, and then you need to appear as a golfer. So I don't want to do that, because a lot of times when I'm playing golf, it really doesn't look like I'm a golfer. So I'm a man who plays golf. I hit this little white ball, and some people would say I'm a golfer, but really some people would never accuse me and put me in that category. So anyway, so the story is, I play quite a lot now. Since I got to Santa Barbara, it feels like I gotta play golf. I'm in Santa Barbara. So here I am, and Denise and I go quite a bit, and we usually go on Mondays. So last Sunday, great Sunday here. Gino was here, we raised the roof. It was an amazing Sunday, and I felt so good and wonderful and lovely. And I got up Monday morning, and Denise and I went off and we played golf. And went out to the range. First thing I usually do, I go to the range, hit some balls. And I hit 25 balls every which way but straight. Now, this is, even for me, that's like, what? So the mind was, if you have a bad practice, it's like having a bad rehearsal. You're going to have a great opening night. So I figured it's going to be a great game because I had a bad practice. So I go out to the first hole, and I hit the ball, and it went somewhere way off to the right, not anywhere close to these are all short holes. Nowhere. So I hit another one, went way off to the left. So I'm feeling, I'm feeling it. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of frustration is beginning to arise. I know that I'm a child of God. I know that I am whole and perfect and complete, and that everything has been given to me, and I need nothing from external. But I'm a little frustrated because my golf shots are going that way. I want them to go that way, because that's where I'm aiming. My intention is to go there. And what's showing up in the outer is this and that. So I'm just feeling a little frustrated. It's only hole one. And Denise is the best golf partner. She's very supportive. She's completely unattached to the game of golf. She cares nothing of how well she plays or I play or anything else. She's out to enjoy herself. Can you imagine? She actually enjoys being outdoors in this beautiful day. It's in Santa Barbara. How can there be a bad day on the golf course? That's Denise's attitude. Mine is, I've got to get it there. So I'm kind of a little off a little bit, go to the second hole. Same thing. I hit 2 tee shots in wrong one. This was in the creek twice. So now I am not even entertaining the idea that I'm a spiritual being at all. I'm just a sucky golfer. That's what I am. I mean, it's coming, it's taking, it's like, all the aliens of my ego mind are starting to descend on my formerly enlightened state of mind and beginning to reframe my sense of self into something very, very specific, and it ain't good. You know what I'm saying? So there I am. So we get second hole, third hole. Do I need to tell you? Same result. 2 bad shots into the creek. It's the same creek, you just go in the opposite direction. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm really breathing, and I'm finding myself distancing myself from Denise. Like, I want to get away from this person who's so freaking positive. I do not want to hear one of those, affirmative rejoinders like, oh, it's just a game, but isn't it a lovely day, and you'll do better next time. No, I can't deal with anything positive right now, thank you. I just need to be in it, because I'm in it. And I am so in it, and I'm just kind of grimacing and grumbling and grumbling and gnashing my teeth. And we get to the 4th hole. This is a hole that I get out my hybrid, and I always hit this club really well. I mean, straight as an arrow, usually. Bing! Off to the left, hits the fence, bounces, goes across into the other fairway. I kiss the ground with my club. Boom. Boom. I was not blessing anybody or anything. Santu, Santu. And I told Denise, I took the club, I put it in the bag. I said, I am done. I am done. I am leaving. She goes, okay. Can you imagine her being so okay with my suffering and having to leave the course? Okay, honey, well, I'll see you later. So I take my bag and I go back to the clubhouse. And I sit down on a bench, and I'm pretty much steaming, okay? And then the thought emerges, I see Denise out there on the 4th fairway somewhere, and she's sauntering along and looks like she's having a good time, and I watch her, and then she goes on the next hole. It's like, doesn't she know? How can she be out there having a good time? I'm suffering here. I'm sitting here. I've just had this terrible experience. Shouldn't she join me? Shouldn't she be here, to suffer with me? I mean, isn't that, see how the mind works? It's like, not only is it bad enough that I was in the soup, that I was just really spiraling downward into the sense of who I'm not, but I was really expecting someone to join me in reminding me and being with me in a state of not knowing who I am, so we could both be completely lost. That's how the mind works. Do you understand this? Misery loves company, not such a good idea. So, she actually told me later, she said, I thought for a minute, maybe it wasn't even a minute, that maybe I should go and join you and, be with you. But then she thought, I thought it would probably be best for you just to be with yourself and just to kind of work that out, which was really good advice. Because, sometimes when you are suffering, when you are miserable, and you've got somebody with you that's willing to join you in that conversation, what happens? You exploit that opportunity to just tell them how horrible and awful, and then you get them to agree with you, and and she would be, petting my head and saying, it's going to be okay. And I would feel like a classic victim, which is not my intention for my life. The straight, long shot of my life is to arrive at a sense of being who I am that's immune from the externals, right? And I don't want somebody coming around me and reminding me who I'm not and giving me sympathy unless, a little sympathy is okay, a little empathy is particularly good, and a little compassion. But don't keep me stuck. And so we have that agreement with each other. So she did exactly the right thing. And she continued and played the round. And she came back. And then I was feeling better by then. It was like a half hour or so later. And so got through the rest of the day. But that night, it wasn't over yet. The ego strikes back, part 2. So what that was about was Nathan came over to watch the football game that night, and we're sitting around having dinner, and Denise goes, Nathan, let me tell you about my golf game today. Oh my God. I had the best shot. On hole 5, I hit it 200 yards straight down the middle of the fairway, and I just chipped it up right onto the green. I'm listening to this. I'm going, okay. I'm just like breathing, noticing. But what's coming up again is that same experience I had, 8 hours earlier on the golf course. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a really sucky golfer. Denise hasn't even had as many lessons as I have. I practice a lot more than she does, and she's playing well. Building the story of who I am not. And so Nathan's listening. Oh, great, Mom, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And then she goes, and then on the next hole, she said, I hit it 2 feet from the pin. And I went, oh boy, why don't we just brag about our golf game? I did, I said it. And Denise looked at me innocently, like, oh, are we hurt? Yes. And Nathan said, Dad, Mom can tell me about her golf game. Oh boy, gurus all around me. I hate it. It's so much better when I had people that could just give me some old-fashioned sympathy. So I had to just be with that one more time. But what's interesting about this, and what really plagued me after this, was not so much that I had this sort of human reaction, I got angry, frustrated, whatever, but that it hurt me so deeply. See, this is the message that for today. Why would some errant golf shots, even 7 or 8 in a row, make me feel so low? I mean, I felt terrible. And many of you are sitting out there going, what's your problem? I have real problems. You want some real problems? I'll tell you about some real problems. But I felt deeply bad inside. So I had to look at that. And what I realized, and there's a whole story around me, particularly around athletics, going back to when my dad wasn't around very much, and I always wanted to play sports, and I couldn't get my dad to take me to any sports, and that's my story. And when I finally got to play sports, I was way too old, and I couldn't perform very well. And I always wanted to be an athlete, and I always felt like I was less than because I couldn't be a good athlete, and that was my biggest dream. And I thought when I was around other guys that were good athletes that defined me as being less than. And it went down to the core of my self-esteem. And so here I am playing this game called golf, which should allow me, at any age to go out and be able to play. And with all this practice and all of this effort and everything, I'm still not becoming a good athlete, a good golfer. And so that didn't just go to not being a good golfer. That went to a core issue is that I can't do it. I'm not doing it well enough. I'm not good, and I'm not good enough. I am not good enough. It goes from a behavior and then an identification. And that's the core wound that we all have, that I'm not good enough. I don't measure up enough. I don't do it right. And I need to do it right because, and let's go into this next slide. So Penny's going to put up a slide here. This comes from Mary O'Malley, who wrote a book called What's in the Way is the Way. And she came up with these 8 spells. We all have them. The first 2 are the foundational spells, and this would be like our classic existential crisis that we all have, that I am separate from life. I'm separate from God, I'm separate from everybody else, and that life is therefore unsafe, because if I'm separate, then it means I'm just me against the world, right? So that leaves the I am not safe. Operationally, that means if that's true, if I'm separate and life is not safe, then I got to control life, right? Because how else am I going to be okay unless I control what's happening out here? I must do it right, see? I must do it right. I'm not doing it right enough. I want to do it right. I want to hit the golf ball. And I want to do it right. And it's not just hooked into how I'm playing golf. This is just a silly metaphor for all of you. There's something going on in your life right now where you feel like you must do it right. Because when you didn't do it right before, you had some very difficult, maybe hostile consequences that came back at you, which goes farther down to, I'm not doing it right enough. And therefore, very deeply, sometimes it means that I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Thus, if I'm wrong, then I'm not lovable. And if I'm not lovable, then I'm all alone. That's exactly what I felt. That's this ridiculously stupid story of me hitting some bad golf shot took me all the way down to feeling, I'm not doing it right enough. I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, in the classic sense of wanting to be accepted by other people, from my peers when I was a kid in high school and everything else, and I'm unlovable, led to that core spell, I'm all alone. And that is the crisis of the spirit. When we feel that we are alone, we are more disconnected from the truth of who we are than any other experience we have. And all that came from what my subconscious mind did with this presenting situation, right? Presenting situation is just, psh, there goes the ball, psh, there goes the ball. And then I did the rest. I made those synaptic connections. Those neural pathways that were the way I'm wired up got me all the way down to believing that I'm wrong and I'm unlovable. But who was not loving me in that moment? Who? Right. In fact, I was with someone who couldn't have loved me anymore in that moment. She cares nothing about whether I'm an athlete or whether I can hit a golf ball. And she's out there wanting me to enjoy the experience, and I'm running this program and taking myself deeper and deeper and deeper into this existential funk and suffering. Isn't it amazing? You think I'm weird? Well, I am. And we all are in a certain way. Every one of us has that kind of weird stuff going on. So self-acceptance is so important. Because when I ran this back and I got to this understanding, so that's kind of the booby prize though, you understand, it's helpful. It's like, oh, now I know why I felt so bad. Well, it wasn't just like, I'll go out next time, play golf, we'll probably play fine. But I felt this yuck, and I felt that way the whole day because I touched into that. But see, with acceptance, we create a buffer. Because acceptance just allows us to be with it, to feel the frustration. I was trying to resist it. I was trying to deny it. I was trying to push it down. I was trying to argue with myself. And all of that kept me moving deeper, deeper into the illusion, deeper, deeper into who I am not, deeper, deeper into this old story that connects me back to the forgetful self. But awareness and acceptance puts a field of protection around that process and moves you further in the direction of your greater self, because it has you move back from the situation lest you identify with it. Because if I hit a bad golf shot, that's just hitting a bad golf shot. But if I say, I'm a bad golfer, which I've said that more than once, and then if I'm a bad golfer, then I'm not very much of an athlete. And if I'm not much of an athlete, then that hooks up with, well, people are not going to like me. And if people don't like me, then I'm going to be all alone. Of course, that's not true, but that is the unbridled experience that you and I have when we don't bring awareness to the beginning, and we all have our triggers for that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's the deal. So this the next slide is a circle of showing all of these. Penny has to go from up on a stool from the camera down to hit this next slide. She's so great. I love her. Thank you, Penny, for being up and down and all around. You're awesome. So it's the same ideas, but they're put on a wheel, which would be considered the samsara, or the wheel of suffering, or whatever you want to say, because none of those lead anywhere good, right? So I am separate, life is not safe, I must control life, I must do it right. I'm not doing it right. I'm wrong, I am unlovable, I'm all alone. Funkville, right? The pits. So do we want to hang out there? No. Spinning wheel, got to go. Okay, anyway, so that's that. Next slide. Penny has to get down off of the ladder again. Hit the next slide button. Now this same wheel, I put it in the center, you can't read it, but you know what it says. We've got a buffer of awareness around it. That's the first concentric circle out there. So the first move out from being identified with this false self is awareness. Once we've done awareness, which is sort of more the objective observation of what's happening, like, oh, I hit a bad golf shot, and that's all that's true at this moment, I hit a bad golf shot. Acceptance would be, oh God, I'm noticing my emotions, so I'm going to have a full being present with those experiences of frustration and anger and so forth, being present with them and giving them the space so that they're not driven through resistance or aversion back into the center, back into that wheel. Does that make sense? Because it's resistance that causes persistence. Have you heard that one? So the opposite, when we don't resist, then we're able to move away from that identification. And that's acceptance. And then beyond acceptance is the field of the I am. And that's where we all want to go. So understanding that when we find ourselves in those situations, our immediate reaction might be to contract and then go into story about what it means and what that says about me and then, all that. But we can do this, if we don't do it in the moment, we can do it in review. Have you ever heard of a do-over? You can do that in a relationship with someone. You do it really poorly and you really mess it up. But then you can do a do-over. Denise and I do this all the time. Okay, I want to do a do-over on that. That wasn't exactly how I wanted to say that. You can do the same thing with yourself. And in doing it over, you may not only pick up some sort of understanding about your psyche and your story and who you think you are at your deepest core level of who you're not, which I had that experience, kind of ran that story from childhood. But that's not so important. What's important is that you move out from the identification of who you are not and move into more of the experience of your grander self. And that's possible for all of us. But it takes being present and non-resistant. Let me read it one more time. Page 50. No resistance, analysis, interpretation, manipulation, or control. I experience just what is. I add nothing to it. I experience each sensation, emotion, and thought completely, and then I let it go. You think it's hard to let it go. It's hard to let it go when you do resist it. See, that's what we think. I can't let it go because we resist it and then we own it. And you can't let it go once you own it. But if you can accept it and be with it, then it's a very light holding that you have. You're observing it and then you can let it go. So I haven't played golf since last Monday. But I'm looking forward to seeing just how well this lesson will work for me. I pray and bless you that it would be useful in your own life in some way. And if not, do over. Yes? There's always another opportunity to do over. There's no finish line. There's just one more concentric circle of awareness. And if we find ourselves back in the circle, we just move back out into awareness, move back out into acceptance. And we are closer to that field of who we are. And that when we're there, we feel good, we feel whole, we feel complete. And that's who we really are. Even in the midst of my most anxious moments, my most self-loathing moments, there is a God, there is a truth, there is a love, there is a wholeness that's holding me going, oh, I wish you could see you the way I see you. And that's true for all of us. There is one that knows us. And that one is within us. And it's waiting for us to let go of the story and get on with the glory of our own being. So may it be so. Namaste. Oh, it's good to remember, isn't it?